Hello everybody and welcome back to another episode of Microsoft Flight Simulator. And as it is just around the corner, I figured I would share with you guys a couple of the key hits to Sim Update 11 and things you may be interested in as it approaches. So stick around, we're going to find out what those are. If you are interested in acquiring any of my Overkills tutorial guides for Microsoft Flight Simulator, please consider joining me on Patreon. Patreon subscribers level tier 2 and above have access to all of my guides, as well as any future updates and future guides that will be coming down the road. Link to Patreon can be found in the description below. All right, so first up, as always, guys, this is just an informational video, so feel free to minimize this screen or go about doing what you were doing as you listen to the sound of my soothing voice. By the way, I am aware of an audio issue that you guys are talking about where my voice is only coming out of one channel. I am working to try to resolve it. Hopefully this video takes care of that, but if not, fret not. I am working on it and trying to figure out what the cause is. It is something that just popped up recently, so I'm not sure what has changed as my setup has not. But so just bear with me, guys. I am aware of it. I do hear your comments and see them, and I am trying to fix it. All right, so now let's go ahead and get started in the information for today. So with Sim Update 11 on the way, I'm not going to go through all of the updates, guys, because there's quite a bit to it. Now, this has nothing to do in particular with the 40th anniversary. I'm just talking about Sim Update 11. There's a couple things that I did want to point out. So some new features that are coming our way. Live traffic has been updated with various quality of life fixes. Okay, now it does state the details below, but basically the injection and overall handling of the live traffic seems to be smoothened out to where they're not so sporadic and not so robotic in their action and activity, or chaotic for that matter, such as the last minute approach aborts where they just suddenly veer off the runway. It sounds like that has been mostly resolved. New memory fragmentation system has been implemented for DX12 to limit the maxed out VRAM. Now, what that means, guys, is essentially what they're doing is they're handling the VRAM more effectively when using DirectX 12. One of the things that was happening is that video cards were being maxed out. Now, you would think that normally that's a good thing. CUDA cores being maxed out is a good thing. It means the video card's being put to its maximum use. However, VRAM, when it is taken up to its maximum and overloaded, just like anything else, when you see a memory leak, when we used to talk about that, that used to happen pretty frequently in the simulator would dump. It can cause the same thing with video card drivers. It can either cause the video card drivers to just crash, or it can cause an intense loss of performance as that RAM starts to be peaked out. So this is a very good thing. This is something that we want to see. We want that VRAM handled much, much smoother. So you should see a slight performance increase, or not necessarily a performance increase, but more performance stability is what we're going to be looking at more here. Improved atmospheric simulation with a big focus on thermals and general tweaks. Now, what that, or for the flight dynamics. Now, what essentially that means for me is you're going to see a more natural experience in the thermal generation, meaning that I'm expecting, however, to see better turbulence, better natural feeling turbulence, wind shears, wind changes effects, anything that would be a thermal generated event. And hopefully that increases the overall simulation experience based on thermal activity. Someone who I think is really going to enjoy that particular aspect, if it's going the way that it sounds like it is people who are using the gliders. If you're a big glider fan, you should see an improvement in the overall simulation of the glider flight. So obviously a big one, as well as staying on that, 3D thermal visualization can be toggled via the weather panel. Why is that a big thing? 3D thermal visualization, if I'm understanding this correctly, if it's truly the way that I'm thinking this, is that you will actually be able to see the thermal generation coming as a display in front of you using probably some sort of wave that's coming up from the ground and working its way up. Again, someone who's going to really enjoy that particular aspect as you're learning is someone like myself who enjoys the gliders but doesn't quite understand how to ride the thermals up yet. Having that 3D visualization will give us a better understanding of what they are actually doing in the simulator, and therefore give us a better opportunity to either A, take advantage of them, or B, learn how to deal with them if, for example, if you're flying fixed wing standard prop, right? It just gives you a better idea of what they're doing, and you'll be able to see them. And then as you see them and fly through them, you'll be able to understand the impact of the aircraft that they have. So it's actually kind of a cool tool. You would think that you probably wouldn't actually want that on, but actually I can see myself using that. And that's something that we're going to test out when the update finally drops. Now, moving on to some overall performance fixes, we have a bunch of general bug fixes. Now, I hate this kind of stuff when it says several crashes have been fixed across the title. Now, that's great, but I have no idea of knowing if the ones that have impacted any particular given scenario have been fixed. Now, that's not to say they haven't gone through and fixed any of that. They have, or stated any of that. They absolutely have. But I just hate that particular statement. There should be a section specifically for that in the patch notes that lists all the bug fixes. And again, in a weird way they do it. Sometimes they don't. There'll be a link down in the description if you guys want to check out the article that I'm happen to be going through. HDR10 is now properly applied when launching the title in full screen mode on PC. So for those of you guys who are HDR users, that should obviously bring some value to you as well as the improved transparent UI readability on HDR screens. I have heard of people complaining about that. I don't personally have to deal with that. I don't have an HDR screen. Actually, I might be HDR, but I don't think it's enabled. And then fixing scenario when road traffic disappeared when multi-monitor was active. I actually did witness that one. So, I mean, that's kind of cool. Not a big deal for me, as primarily I record only on single screen. So I don't fly with the multiple screens as often as I would like. And it also says various fixes and improvements for the screen reader accessibility feature. Again, don't worry about that, but if that's something that's valuable to you, I did want to mention that because there are some people who may actually take use of that. And I didn't want to just leave that out because that is a quality of life adjustment is the reason why I mentioned that particular one. A few navigation fixes. I don't use it, but I have heard people complaining about the AI pilot requesting pushback service when it is only supposed to be managing ATC communications. That has been resolved. Next one that I have seen myself that I wanted to state, there were a bunch of runways where the ILS was misaligned. I have actually twice gone into a couple of different airfields and found myself on the ILS approach and veered off to the left of the runway. So obviously that was a definite go around. And if you're flying true ILS scenarios, you could find like a Cat 3 scenario, you could find yourself in a bad spot. So it sounds like that has been adjusted. A couple of ATC fixes that, again, I'll leave a link down in the description if you guys want to go through, but there has been some adjustments as far as ATC handling, VFR departures and traffic based on the airport that you are flying to and what airport was actually reporting to you. So a couple of adjustments there. And then added departures procedures to air traffic. So it sounds like AI traffic is now going to also have to follow the same departure procedures that we do as we depart from a particular airport. Now, again, that's going to enhance the overall ATC experience and what you're hearing on the radio traffic. And then obviously make the aircraft actually behave itself. A couple of weather fixes. MEDAR, or they added MEDAR interpolation every 10 minutes to avoid the haze apparitions being too abrupt. I have seen that. This is the more important one that I find. Proper temporal fading over 1 minute when new data arrives, meaning that so you have taken off with a very particular set of MEDAR information. That MEDAR information has now been updated. All of a sudden, bam, the weather just changes, right? So, you know, whether wind gust, whatever it may be, wind direction, it just suddenly, bam, you know, there's no smoothness to it. You know, there's no general adjustment to it. Well, now they've added it. Now it should be a fade from one particular set of MEDAR information to the next as you cross into that particular zone. So again, it's going to feel more natural. You're going to have a much better simulation experience. And then the better handling of MEDARs in areas where there are many available MEDARs. So when you have a highly populated airfield area with multiple weather pieces of information, those are going to blend again much smoother. That probably also has something to do with the temporal fading and allowing those areas to more smoothly conjoin together. And I do appreciate that. The trees at runway 10 for TFFJ, the infamous St. Barts, it sounds like has been fixed. They have finally removed the trees at the top of the path for runway 10. For those of you who don't know, runway 10 at St. Bart's is that one that you always see on YouTube where people are screaming right over the top of a little street and then suddenly pitch down to land in the airport. So an island out in the Caribbean. There was trees right in front of runway 10 and they weren't supposed to be there. You're supposed to be able to have a clear line of sight to the approach all the way down, and you didn't used to be able to. There was actually an add-on, a scenery add-on that I personally have installed that removes those. It sounds like that's not going to be needed anymore, and that has finally been removed. There are a couple other runway fixes that you guys are going to want to check out. Again, link to this will be down in the description below. A bunch of aircraft adjustments and some bug fixes, especially with the avionics systems. I'm not going to go through each one of those because it's going to become very mundane and only affect specific people. You're going to know it when you see it, and if you're not going to know it, you probably never experienced it. So I'm going to sort of skip past those. This one I am very happy about because I fly here a lot. Fixed road vehicles appearing on KLAX runways. So Los Angeles International. Yes, that was an absolute big one. And then finally getting into some peripherals that you guys can expect, some peripheral judgment. Tobii Eye Tracker 5 should no longer stop working when changing windows. I have heard people complaining about this. I change windows very, very frequently. That's why I have never bothered to even get out and test it. Now, I'm be waiting on you guys' feedback to tell me how you feel about Tobii Eye Tracker 5 after that has been dropped. So after Sim Update 11, I'll be paying attention for that. Some really cool aircraft adjustments. So you have added dedicated helicopter gamepad preset, as well as added dedicated helicopter input. So now, following Sim Update 11, you will actually need to bind specifically collective, cyclic, engine throttle, things like that, anti-torque pedals, I imagine, versus just using rudder, throttle, pitch, etc., to bind your access for a helicopter. Now they're going to actually be in there as a separate item specifically designated for helicopters. So this really gives you the option to easily customize your flight experience for helicopters versus fixed wing aircraft. Same thing for gliders. Gliders are now going to have their own input section to be able to, again, configure them accordingly. Now, that's going to be everything as far as releasing the tow cable. There's going to be a keybind for it. Water ballast, there's going to be inputs for it. They have also added a digital input to increase and decrease spoilers. Okay, so it's going to add a very, it's going to open up the array of optional controls for taking care of your spoilers. And we'll definitely be showing that off when it comes time, but I'm very glad to hear that. Rather than just being a simple access, it gives us much more finite control and a much more higher range of things that we can do with it in order to set them as we desire versus just having on, off, and then the access. So that'll be a lot of fun to mess around with, and I will definitely be showing you guys that once the update drops. Finally, on controls, a couple of presets have been added. We have the Thrustmaster T16000 for helicopter preset, Logitech Extreme 3D Pro helicopter preset. I had to giggle at that one because that is actually where my flight simulation experience began. Whoever knew that it was going to turn into what it did today. And TCA Flight Stick X helicopter preset, as well as the Thrustmaster TA320 helicopter preset. So a couple of easily used cameras, or easily used cameras. You can tell what I'm reading. Easily used control schemes for the helicopters, but I think my biggest thing is I'm glad that they finally added a dedicated helicopter section because that's going to be very, very nice. And again, offer that customization. So we'll see what happens there. Virtual reality. They fixed the default VR panel opening position, so it's no longer right in your face. The toolbar panels open in VR are no longer open when switching to normal mode. I'm going to read all of the VR stuff because it's all pretty good. Flight panel window positions are now saved after closing and reopening from the toolbar. So no more having to readjust them every time you go to open a panel up. It will stay in the last position that it was last used in. And fixed a rendering issue causing canted displays. That's a big one. And then fixed raycast not aligned with the cursor in the main menu. Everything else is pretty much goes through the SDK dev modes and editors, as well as editors such as visual effects editors, aircraft and scenery editors. So super excited for the prospect of Sim Update 11 and what it's going to bring. I hope it does release on time. I believe that we are expected to see it as of the 11th of this month, which is why I decided to get ahead of the curve a little bit and talk about some of the things that should be coming our way. So quite a few quality of life improvements, some control adjustments. It does definitely sound like some performance stability improvements, not necessarily more FPS or anything like that, but the stability of the overall performance from the time that you launch it to the time that you close it down should be significantly improved, it sounds like. I'm very grateful to hear that the DirectX 12 VRAM has been adjusted. Guys, if they really start to nail down DirectX 12 and get it to where it is smooth, it is going to be a much, much better experience for everybody involved who is capable of using DX12. DX12 is a much faster API and a much more efficient API, assuming that obviously, as you're experiencing now, the simulator or game that you happen to be using it with is optimized and designed to use it. And we're slowly stepping in the right direction. We're slowly getting that way. So with this new adjustment, DirectX 12 is something that I will be also revisiting on the channel. So you guys can expect a couple of different updates as of the time that Sim Update 11 drops from the channel. We will definitely be putting it through quite a few of the paces, as well as showing off some of the new features and just seeing what the overall experience is like. As always, guys, I hope you guys have a wonderful week. Stay tuned for the next video. Stay safe and healthy, and I will see you in that next one.